6. Start. 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
The shuttle Discovery off the pad and in orbit tonight.
From Cape Canaveral, NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. It's been a day of tension, exhilaration, and exhaustion here at the Kennedy Space Center. A day when the American Space Shuttle program roared back to life with the first launch since the Challenger blew up in these same skies 32 months ago. Tonight, the shuttle Discovery is in orbit and on schedule. However, as NBC's Robert Bazell tells us, the weather almost kept it on the launch pad today.
Out on the launch pad, the closeout crew continues with their work.
Before dawn, as workers on the pad made the final preparations and the crew ate breakfast, the expectation was that the launch would be postponed.
We cannot launch today if the winds do not change either in direction and wind speed.
The problem was that winds in the upper atmosphere were much weaker than usual for this time of year. NASA officials feared that the shuttle's computers, programmed to expect stronger winds, might drive the spaceship off course. Despite that, controllers gave the 5 astronauts permission to suit up. A group of co-workers cheered them on as they boarded the van for the trip to Pad 39B. The astronauts were obviously trying to relieve tension. Commander Rick Houck put on a pair of trick glasses before he climbed into the cockpit.
Everything continuing to go very well in the...
Ground controllers continued with the routine preparations during the countdown, still not expecting a launch. NASA officials had insisted they would not waive the new strict rules about weather, but suddenly they did.
We have just heard Launch Director Bob Seek receive a go from all elements of the launch team.
Once the launch appeared possible, there was obvious apprehension as the directors asked the final questions and made certain all systems were ready and safe.
A final clear to launch from the range. Good luck and Godspeed.
There was great relief when the countdown passed T-minus 31 seconds and the onboard computers took control, leading to the launch.
0, and liftoff. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
There was joy on the ground and in the air when Discovery passed the point in flight where Challenger exploded.
Discovery, go at throttle up. Go.
Many people noticed a flame spouting from the left booster rocket, the part which caused the Challenger disaster. But officials do not think there was a problem.
Not that we can see from those pictures or from the real-time data we got. Everything looks right down the line, but we'll look at this very carefully.
After Discovery was headed safely for orbit, NASA Administrator James Fletcher talked to the people in launch control.
Well, to start with, wow. That was really something. It's been a long wait.
Everyone at the Kennedy Space Center shared that feeling. Robert Bazell, NBC News, Cape Canaveral.
The Discovery's cargo, a communication satellite, has now been released from the shuttle. The task of positioning it in Earth orbit is under the control of the Johnson Space Center in Houston. NBC's Dan Molina is there tonight.
As NASA's ground cameras gradually lost sight of Discovery, everyone inside of mission control at Houston's Johnson Space Center could finally breathe easily. The shuttle, the crew, were in space.
Nice to be in orbit.
And Space Shuttle Discovery is now in orbit.
Almost immediately, the crew began the procedures for launching the tracking and data relay satellite. It's designed to expand communications between shuttles and the ground. As the checkout of the satellite began, there were words of appreciation for the job done in Houston.
We sure appreciate y'all getting us on up to orbit the way we should be.
And for those at the Cape.
Just want to give our heartfelt thanks to all those folks down there who did all this good work.
32 months ago, NASA's official photographer captured the shock and the grief in mission control. Flight Director Jay Green, the man in charge. On the right in this picture, Dick Covey, the man who's now the pilot on board Discovery. Scenes a world away from the atmosphere in the control room today, the enthusiasm of tourists and employees watching on NASA's TV system, the relief among Space Center staffers as they finished up the day.
Of course, I'll have to admit that I was sure relieved to see it go on up and see it perform as well as it did.
I cried. It's very emotional.
Flight controllers are now wrestling with a few in-flight problems, but they did what they've been waiting to do for 2.5 years. Their orbiter and 5 of their colleagues are in space. Dan Molina, NBC News at the Johnson Space Center, Houston.
One of the NASA officials intimately involved in this launch is J.R. Thompson, who returned to the agency as part of the shakeup following the Challenger explosion. Mr. Thompson, you were keeping a very close eye today on those solid rocket boosters and on the main engines. Based on what you were able to see today visually and the data readout that you were getting, how did they perform?
Well, everything that we've seen so far looks right down the middle of the road. We have no concerns right now at all. But we've still got a lot of data to analyze. We'll be looking at the hardware tomorrow on the boosters, and we're looking forward to that. But right now, we feel good.
In all the hours leading up to this launch today, we were told if there was any problem with the weather whatsoever, the launch would not go off. Yet we had rainstorms just 17 miles offshore. The winds were variable a lot of the times. Does this mean that NASA can be more flexible than we were led to believe?
No, we set up very strict criteria, and I think we adhered to it right down the line. You know, we delayed the launch about an hour and a half to get some additional winds aloft data. It met all of our criteria. The offshore rains were outside of the perimeter, and it was just a good day.
But at the same time, NASA must have felt an enormous amount of pressure to get this off today with the whole world looking in. I know that you weren't going to risk anything that was going to go wrong with it, but at the same time, you are playing a public relations game because you've got to get back on track, correct?
Well, we were obviously very interested in getting this shuttle launch off today, but I don't think there was any pressure. You know, if we couldn't have done it today, we were all prepared to come back tomorrow over the weekend and do it right.
Now, there's been one mission here, and that is to get the satellite up and around. They're going to be up there for 3 more days, and then they're going to come back. This is an effective dry run, isn't it not, for NASA?
Yes, this is a good, certainly a good launch, and if we can get that satellite out, it'd be good. But we're really planning for the next decade.
All right, thank you very much, J.R. Thompson, for being with us tonight. I'll be back in a moment with the cheering section here at the Cape and the worldwide audience for the return of the shuttle today. Here at the Cape, the launch of Discovery was cheered by a crowd estimated at 250,000 people. Many of them had waited for hours. However, as NBC's Noah Nelson reports tonight, they weren't disappointed.
At dawn, they were still coming. Those who wanted to see the liftoff with their own eyes. More than 250,000 people lined the roads and packed the viewing areas. For many, the liftoff delays either heightened the anticipation or increased the anxiety, but the moment did come. As the Discovery pierced the first bank of clouds, some held hands. Many simply held their breaths until the shuttle soared past the point in the sky where the Challenger had exploded.
It was wonderful. What do you mean, what did I think of it? It was wonderful. It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my whole life.
Am I proud to be an American today? What a country.
Among those celebrating were the friends of Krista McCullough, the teacher who died with the crew on the last shuttle mission. These teachers were part of the same program that allowed civilian McCullough to go on that mission.
We were down here for the last one. And to see this one go every inch of the way, we were excited and happy and relieved and ecstatic and jumping and crying and whatever.
They say today's success gives fuller meaning to the Challenger crew's sacrifice. Those who came to the launch not only shared an emotional moment, they also witnessed the return of pride in this country's space program. Noah Nelson, NBC News, Cape Canaveral, Florida.